There's no doubt that we're living in critical times, hard to deal with, just as the Apostle Paul prophesied under inspiration in 2 Timothy chapter 3. Many times we've read Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, and Revelation chapter 6. But who would ever have known how deeply a pandemic, so-called natural disasters, violence, and unrest would affect us economically, physically, and even emotionally? Some of you, dear friends, face unimaginable hardships. Many have experienced loss of loved ones, imprisonment, physical abuse, sickness, financial problems, and sometimes a number of these or other circumstances all at the same time. You, dear brothers and sisters, are in our prayers. With this in mind, the theme for our program is, in difficult times, Jehovah always comforts.
So we've just seen Ralph Walls introducing the talk component to this month's JW Broadcasting episode. As you saw there, his theme is, in difficult times, Jehovah always comforts. And broadly speaking, I'm going to be honest with you, there isn't that much to talk about in Ralph Walls' talk. I actually think he plays it incredibly safe. If I were tasked with giving a Jehovah's Witness broadcasting episode or hosting such an episode, I guess my 15 to 20 minute talk would be pretty much what we've just seen here. It would be talking generically about comforting thoughts from the Bible. So Ralph Walls, again, playing it safe. I did just find it interesting when he said the following.
But who would ever have known how deeply a pandemic, so-called natural disasters, violence, and unrest would affect us economically, physically, and even emotionally?
So-called natural disasters. What an odd expression. So are we disputing that there can be such thing as natural disasters, or that disasters can be natural? Now, interestingly, when I went on Watchtower Online Library and typed in with brackets so-called natural, it came up with at least 5 occurrences in Watchtower literature. Bear in mind, they only show you certain years for their back catalogue of literature. But it was still able to show me 5 occurrences of this term so-called natural disasters in the literature. And without doing too much digging into each and every occurrence, if I had to guess, the reason why the organisation uses this term, and Ralph Walls has just used this term, so-called natural disasters, is probably because Jehovah's Witnesses are a creationist religion who believe that planet Earth was created perfectly by God to support human life. So anything that we're seeing today, such as hurricanes, earthquakes, anything that is natural in cause and represents a threat to human life, is actually in a way unnatural, because it's not how God intended things to be. It's only because mankind has fallen into sin that somehow these things are happening. It's all to do with sin and Satan and that sort of thing. We can't call earthquakes, hurricanes, etc. natural. I don't want to put words in Ralph Walls' mouth, but if I had to guess, that's probably the reason why he used such an odd expression.
Dear brothers and sisters, as we get closer to the Great Tribulation. We will face more distressing circumstances, and during the Great Tribulation, our trust in Jehovah must be solid. We need to be sensitive and receptive to the ways in which he consoles and strengthens us. We need to keep in mind what Paul says at 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4, perhaps even memorizing it. Jehovah is a God who comforts us in all our trials.
I find it interesting that even in a talk about comfort, a nice, generic Christian talk, that again is just the sort of talk I would have given in Ralph Walls' shoes if I'd been tasked with hosting a JW Broadcasting episode, even when playing it safe and talking about general Bible principles and how these can be comforting, Jehovah's Witnesses cannot resist making it just that little bit culty and that little bit doomsday. They have to bring up the Great Tribulation. They have to say things like, you may think things are bad now, but you just wait until the Great Tribulation's here and things are so much worse. It's when things are really going bad and the world is about to end that you need to, your trust in Jehovah must be solid. Those were Ralph Wall's words. So invoking this fear that exists among all Jehovah's Witnesses, that Armageddon is just around the corner, and exploiting it as a tool for control.
Now we want to talk to some of you in our audience. Because of stresses, disappointments, and hurt feelings caused by fellow believers, some have strayed from Jehovah's organization. Others may have been removed from the congregation, but now would like to return. To you we say, allow Jehovah to comfort and strengthen you. He wants you to draw close to him, and he will help you. James chapter 4, verse 8 says, draw close to God, and he will draw close to you. Jehovah has great care for such ones. Let's read what he says at Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 16. The stray I will bring back, the injured I will bandage, and the weak I will strengthen. Some who have recovered have said that one of the most difficult things for them to do was to cross the threshold of the kingdom hall. But remember, it's Jehovah who bandages you, his sheep, helping you to heal. In the same chapter, in verse 12, he says, I will care for my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered. In imitation of that love, the faithful slave says, we view you as lost sheep, not a lost cause. To all we say, no matter what you face, remember, in difficult times, Jehovah always comforts.
So what we've just seen is the conclusion to Ralph Walls' talk. Again, not that much to talk about in what, a 15-minute talk intended to give this generic message of comfort. But again, even when playing it safe, Ralph Walls can't help but make it just that little bit culty and that little bit manipulative. Look at the verse that was read, Ezekiel 34, verse 16. The stray I will bring back, the injured I will bandage, and the weak I will strengthen. Ralph Walls very clearly directing these final words to any who have strayed from the organization, any who feel disenchanted with the organization, with either individuals in the organization or the organization itself and its abusive, manipulative policies. And Ralph Walls is here describing people who leave Jehovah's Witnesses, including those who leave for conscientious reasons, as strays, as being injured, as requiring bandaging, as being weak. And if you think about it, this is gaslighting. It's a strategy that is repeatedly used in Jehovah's Witness propaganda when you have a narcissistic leadership that needs to control people and needs people to feel dependent on them. Whenever someone manages to break free, the problem will always be with them. And interestingly, Ralph Walls, who, by the way, I have met in person, and he strikes me as being a lovely man. He actually said some really nice things to me when we did meet all the way back in 2003. I actually gave a talk in what was then his congregation in Harlem, and he invited me and my father and my friend to lunch at Brooklyn Bethel. Really nice man. But when you are a mouthpiece for this organization, no matter how nice you are, you're always going to end up parroting the hateful, manipulative ideology of the group that you represent. And that's what Ralph Walls is doing here. He's sinking into this tried and trusted method of making those who leave feel unworthy or pinning the blame on them. It's not acceptable in the mind of Ralph Walls or in the mind of the governing body that anyone would have a legitimate reason to leave Jehovah's Witnesses. You're only going to want to leave Jehovah's Witnesses in their minds if there's something wrong with you, if you are weak.